wait for the truck to go by. And hey, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week, my first question comes from Francois Lacombe, who says, "Hey Steve, you've recently done several off-Monday rambles with a great picture of a nebula displayed on a computer screen in the background. What nebula is that, may I ask? You have also stopped doing them while driving around in your car. Why is that? Did some incident make you realize that it's not a good idea to vlog while driving? Was it taking up too much of your time? Just got tired of it, maybe? Oh, and what I'd like to see in the new Star Trek series is some creativity, risk-taking, and actual science fiction. Love your channel. Take care." Hey Francois, it's me, Steve from the future. Funny story, I was editing my answer to your question just now, and I realized that I gave you the wrong answer to what my desktop image is. In my original answer, I said that it was a picture of the pillars of creation in the Eagle Nebula, and actually, it's not. It's a picture of the Carina Nebula, which is known as Mystic Mountain. So that is the desktop image that you notice that you like so much. And I confuse them because they look very similar, and I'm a dipshit who forgets what his desktop image is. So there you go. Mystic Mountain from the Carina Nebula is that desktop image. Thank you for asking, and now back to the rest of my original answer, which is not as wrong. Why don't I do the driving off Monday rambles anymore? Because it's mostly time. I actually really like doing those. I liked doing the ones where like part of it was driving and me talking to the camera that was in the seat next to me, and then part of it was sort of stopped at a location going somewhere. I really like that format. I just don't do it anymore because of time. I never really got into any trouble talking to the camera while driving. It's just like talking to a person. You know, it's just that the person doesn't talk back. I'm not staring at the camera the whole time I'm driving. I'm looking at the road and glancing at the camera every so often, just like as you would do if you were talking to a person in the seat next to you. So that safety was never really an issue, and I never ran into any problems. I never almost had an accident or anything like that. The Off Monday Ramble series is different than other series I do because I have tinkered with the presentation pretty much since I started doing it. A lot of them are just me talking to a webcam. A lot of them are a combination of webcam and like driving stuff or on location stuff. And more recently, they've been a combination of me sitting in front of the computer, so almost like a reverse angle of the webcam shot where you can see the computer behind me, and also, you know, photographic elements or screen caps from websites and stuff like that. And it's just, I keep sort of tinkering with the presentation to try and find like that perfect way of doing an Off Monday Ramble. And I'll probably keep changing it as it goes. It seems like that's what it's become to me, is something that I do it a certain way for a while and then I change it and I do it a different way. Troubleshooter 125. There are movies out there that, to my mind anyway, have moments, things that grab me. One example is the scene in 2010 Odyssey 2 when, after an awkward conversation, Haywood Floyd tells his wife and son, "I'm going on the flight." The implication of those 5 words, their impact on Floyd's wife, his son's innocent question, all of that just gels somehow. And the synthesizer theme underneath adds a subtle touch which I like. The movie itself may not be a world beater, but there is something in that scene that works for me. Can you think of such moments that you favor? And if so, would you share them with us? There are many such moments. There are moments like that from films that I love. Like absolutely love, like the entire final scene of There Will Be Blood is something that I could just watch just by itself over and over again. I think that the whole movie is great, but that final scene between Eli and Daniel in his bowling alley at his house is just perfection. And the moment in that scene that is sort of like you're describing how you feel about that moment in 2010 is when Eli is trying to pitch Daniel on buying the bandy tract, the last untapped section of Little Boston that has not been drilled for oil. And Daniel just sort of pipes up in the middle of Eli's pitch and says, "Those areas have been drilled." And then he explains to him the process of drainage, how because he's drilled all the surrounding area, he's already gotten the oil underneath the untapped bandy tract, and really basically that Eli has lost and he has nothing left to bargain with. But that one moment, that turn in the scene where Daniel goes from sort of passively listening and going, "Okay, yeah, tell me about your plan, tell me what you want, tell me how I can help you," and then he twists right there to, "I'm in control, I'm the dominant one, I've beaten you, and now I'm going to show you how I've beaten you." That's an electric moment. I love that moment so much. There's a moment also in a film that I don't really like all that much, that I've always admired, and that's in the movie Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic. The moment when the captain realizes that they're not going to make it. There's a close-up of the face of the captain when when one of his crewmen informs him that the ship is going to sink in, I forget how long, like 2 hours or something, and the closest rescue is 4 hours away. And there's a moment of sort of realization in the face of the captain that is wonderfully played by that actor, and is a really, really wonderful moment in that movie that otherwise I can take or leave. But that's another one. One of those moments where, as you say in your question, everything just gels. Joel Kazoo. Steve, without naming any names, what can we do as pro-feminist atheists to combat the negative energy of anti-feminist atheists without just unnecessarily stirring up the shit pot? It seems like combating anti-feminist atheists head-on does nothing more than attract trolls who accuse us of white knighting and pummel us with misogynist rantings, and make outsiders paint all atheists with the same brush. I know when I was still a theist, it was the loudmouth anti-feminist douchebag atheists, again, not naming names, who turned me off of the atheist movement for a very long time. What we can do is provide an alternative. And that doesn't mean that we have to necessarily talk about nothing but feminism, or talk about nothing but feminism as it applies to the atheist community. We can simply talk about the same sort of things that atheists talk about, that atheists like to talk about, but just leave out the misogyny, leave out the anti-feminism, leave out the grumbling and the pissing and moaning about, how much better women have it, or how feminism is a cult, or all this other horseshit that the people you're talking about trade in and use to pander to their audiences. We just leave that bit out. I also think it's very important to create new original content instead of just endless response videos. That's where you get into this, stirring up animosity and having trolls invade each other's videos. Most of the people that you're talking about do a huge portion of their content is just response videos, just piggybacking on a video that someone else already made and offering their own snarky, smart-ass commentary. If we create our own original content, that is also a way of providing an alternative. And then if they want to do response videos to our original content that we create, let them. Do what I do. Just don't even watch. Don't even pay no attention. Continue to create your own original content with your own ingenuity, your own creativity, your own hard work. And if they want to make rant videos against you, let them do it. Let them do it in their own little rant space. That's what I do. I just ignore them. I've got work to do. Cycle. Question. I have never been religious and have never believed in the actual existence of any deity. As a child, I thought all of the grown-ups were playing a terribly boring game of pretend. My parents are Catholic but aren't very observant, only attending church during weddings or major holidays, so I wasn't raised very religiously either. I only just recently familiarizing myself with atheist activism, going on 1 year, but as an atheist with no real background in religion, do you consider this a positive trait or something that will hamper me? I consider that a very positive trait. I know there are probably people watching this video right now. I know there are several regular viewers of mine who comment on my stuff from time to time that would describe themselves the same way, as having never been religious. Many atheists do come out of a religious tradition, but I know there are several, at least viewers of mine, and I imagine many more in the much broader atheist community, who have a biography very similar to yours. They were never religious. They don't really know a lot about religion, certainly not from a first-person perspective. And because of that, maybe you don't necessarily have as much of an interest in engaging with religion in terms of argument. You might not be as interested in having debates with religious people, or engaging with apologetics, or trying to demonstrate why you think atheism is a more justifiable position than a religious position. Maybe you don't care about that, or maybe that just doesn't come naturally to you. That's fine, because I think the atheist movement should be more than that. I think all of that stuff is really important, and I do that myself. That's pretty much all my Atheist Read series is that kind of engagement and putting up an opposing viewpoint to the Christian apologetic position. But the atheist movement can and must be more than that. So if you're drawn to other aspects of it, if you're drawn to maybe community outreach, or creating more positive visibility for atheists in the broader community, if you're making sure that, marginalized people within the atheist community are given a fair shake, and are given a fair hearing of their ideas and their concerns. There are many, many different ways of being an atheist activist that are necessary and positive that don't necessarily have anything to do with having arguments with religious people. There are all sorts of secular atheist types of activism that you can engage in that you do not need to have a great interest or knowledge of religion in order to take part in. And I would, if you're interested in that, I would highly encourage you to do so. James Carmichael, as a visually impaired person, I find I'm often discriminated against in employment, sports, and just general social situations. I know what I can and cannot do. One thing that does annoy me, though, is when people talk about discrimination, and the first thing that usually comes up is race. Why does race always seem to stand taller than all other forms of discrimination and hate when those two things are generally talked about? You're absolutely right to point out that there are many forms of discrimination that people experience that are often overlooked. We don't tend to think about discrimination against the blind or people with other physical disabilities in the same way that we think about people being discriminated on the basis of race or gender or sexual orientation, those sorts of things. And that's something I've actually been called out for, or maybe I should say called in for, because it wasn't really, accusatory. It was just, hey, don't forget about this. But I've been reminded of that myself, that I talk a lot about racial discrimination and gender discrimination and LGBT discrimination when I'm talking about sort of social justice related issues, but I don't talk very much about people discriminated against because of disability. And that's a completely fair point. Why do we talk mostly about race when we talk about discrimination and inequality? I think probably because racial discrimination is something that we as a society have been guilty of from the very beginning. And it is written into the DNA of our society in a very unfortunate way. And you could argue that, so is discrimination against blind people. But it has not, or at least it doesn't feel like it has shaped our history in the same way that racial discrimination has. So I think that's probably why race discrimination is talked about a lot more than discrimination against the disabled. But you are absolutely right to point out that it is just as harmful a form of discrimination, and people who are discriminated against on those factors deserve justice and deserve equal treatment just as much as anybody else. Deadhead Animation. What are some other popular pro-feminist YouTubers in the atheist community that you enjoy? Do you think there is a deficit of said content creators on YouTube? One of my favorite people in the world right now is Christy Winters. I'm proud to call her my friend. I'm proud to call her my fellow YouTuber. She has been doing amazing content, not just on atheism, but also on feminism. She's done a series of videos recently discussing the evidence for patriarchy. So if you're not familiar with Christy Winters, check her out. Who else? Kevin Logan is good. He's someone who is very much a pro-feminist and also an atheist YouTuber, and he sort of is like an attack dog, a pit bull who goes after the anti-feminist voices on YouTube. Foxy Jezebel is awesome. Tori the Queer is awesome. There are many, many, many. If you look at the end of my Why YouTube Atheism Needs Feminism video, there's a huge long list of people that I think are worth paying attention to. Not all of them are outspoken feminists. Some of them are people who hardly ever even mention feminism, but they manage to talk about atheist-related topics without demeaning women and without attacking and vilifying feminists. So there's not a shortage of content. Unfortunately, there is a shortage of high-profile content. Joseph Falpiano, hey Steve, I'd like to know your thoughts on the recent events here at Mizzou and the Concerned Student 1950 movement. I honestly believe we're seeing history in the making, and I'm immensely happy that students from universities all across the country have united in solidarity for the safety and equality of our African American students, and by extension, African Americans in general. It's just a shame that it took terrorist threats and a swastika written in feces to bolster all this activism. That said, shifting cultural societal attitudes and achieving socioeconomic equality is a difficult and broad endgame to map out, unlike the much clearer and easily defined goals of the civil rights movement back in the 50s and 60s, i.e. desegregation of schools and the right to vote. And it's up to us as members of a privileged majority to not only step back and let our brothers and sisters of color take the reins, but also do our part to ensure they have the support they need to keep Concerned Student 1950 going. How do you think this can be accomplished? What you said about allowing them to take the reins is very important. One of the least helpful comments that I have seen on my comments, on my videos where I've talked about the Mizzou protests, is when people say things like, you know, I want to side with the protesters, but they're not going about it in a way that I can support. You know, I can only imagine how condescending that must sound to the ears of a black student protesting racism at his or her university coming from the mouth of a white person. How condescending does that sound? Look, I would really love to help you out in your fight against racial inequality. Yeah, white supremacy, racial discrimination, that's all terrible. I'm with you there. But can't you, go about opposing it in a way that I'm more comfortable with as a white person? Maybe if you could just, tweak your protests a little so that I can be more comfortable with them as a white person, then we could really be on the same page. What a shitty thing to say. The fact that we would implicitly place ourselves in the role of the arbiter, where we get to decide, okay, black people, rise up, protest racism, but make sure you do it this way, not this way. That's not our job. That's not our role. And us taking that upon ourselves to do that is actually part of the problem. That's a form of white supremacy. It might be a form of implicit, relatively benign white supremacy, but nonetheless, it's paternalistic, and it's something that we should just never do. We do not have the right to dictate to the protesters how they should be protesting, or what their tone should be, or what they should be worried about, what their priorities should be. We need to step back, and as you say in your question, give them the reins, let them take it where they decide they need to take it, and support them. We need to be the support. We need to be the ones who say to our fellow white folks, hey, what these people are doing is important. What these people are doing is necessary and overdue. And it's going to make our entire society better. It's going to make things better for black folks all around the country. And because it's going to be better for them, it's going to be better for us. It's going to be better for everybody. Because diversity is a source of strength, not a source of weakness. We need to lift up people and make sure that people are treated with equality and with fairness, and draw strength from that diversity, not see it as a threat or as a source of division. So we white folks, we need to step back. We need to let the protesters take charge. We need to let the protesters set their own course and decide for themselves what is important to them and what they need to do and how they need to go about doing it. And then we need to be the backup. And we need to especially call out our fellow white folks and make sure that they understand the importance of supporting these people and being on their side and not trying to dictate to them. We do not need to take up the so-called white man's burden here. We need to lay that down. That's horseshit. That causes way more problems than it ever solves. It's not for us to save them and to tell them what they need to do. It's our job to give them the reins and to let them go where they need to go and to support them and make sure that they have the help they need to get there. And I know that's very vague, and you kind of were asking, what can we do specifically? I don't know. I'm not a community organizer. I don't know specifically what we can do, but in my heart and in my mind, that's what I try to do in my very limited, paltry way in my interactions with people on YouTube and social media. I try to listen to the voices of the protesters and lift them up and amplify them as best as I can. And to save my own thoughts and my own opinions for myself. Because my input is neither desired nor helpful, I think, in this situation. But yeah, that's what I think we should do. And damn it, Joseph, damn you for asking a really serious question with a lot of very important sociological implications right before I cut to the lightning round. You know how difficult it is for me to segue from a really serious, important question to something as goofy and silly and frivolous as
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Whatever. The Insane Pumpkin Carver. Steve, given your best and most realistic guess, how long do you think it'll be until, okay, we'll take these one at a time, America gets its first woman as president? About a year. America gets its first openly atheist president. Oh man, 20 years, 30 years, maybe? That might be optimistic. Man walks on Mars. If it happens sometime in the next 20 years, I will be pleasantly surprised. I'm not terribly optimistic about it. I hope it's like in 10 years, but... Newt Gingrich's moon colony is founded. I would go with a not within the lifetime of Newt Gingrich, most definitely. Probably never. And the cyborgs will rise up and wipe us out. It'll be probably right after the Gingrich moon colony is founded. If we've given Newt Gingrich or his progeny that much influence over our society, that's probably the moment when the cyborgs will realize that it's our moment of weakness and they can rise up and take us out. Malevolent divinity. If you had an excessive amount of sandstone just lying around and were capable of using it as a building material with which to build anything you could dream, what would you build with it? I would build pyramids, and I would use them to store grain. Kevin Logan, where is the love? In my pants. Yarrow Kassir, do you think Audie will feature more in Steve and Stuffy? No, probably not. I kind of like Audie's role in Steve and Stuffy as it is, where every once in a while she's in the background of a shot, or there'll be just sort of a cut to her every now and then. I don't think she'll ever be like a major character. Radical Bacon. Dear Steve, I was walking home from the grocery store after dark, and a couple guys started catcalling me from their truck. They followed me home and sat outside for a while until I called the non-emergency line, and they sent a patrol car to shoo them away. But now I'm scared to leave the house and walk after dark. Can I cry on your shoulder? Yeah, that sucks. I'm so sorry that happened. Yes, you can cry on my shoulder. For all the good that'll do. I'm sorry that happened. Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Hey Steve, I know this is going to sound strange and a little weird, but imagine if you were being threatened by somebody and had to hire bodyguards for protection. Instead of using real people, you would be using cartoon characters from famous animated action shows. Which one of these would you hire and why? The SWAT Cats, Biker Mice from Mars, the Powerpuff Girls, Darkwing Duck, or the main six from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic? Well, I would go with the Powerpuff Girls because the only of those shows you listed, the other ones I ever actually watched were Darkwing Duck and the Powerpuff Girls, and I'm pretty sure the Powerpuff Girls could beat Darkwing Duck to a bloody pulp without even breaking an adorable sweat. So I'm going to go with them. And when they're done taking care of whatever my business is, I'm going to send the Powerpuff Girls over to Radical Bacon's neighborhood so they can take care of those assholes that were catcalling her. Jesper Lawman, if you could go back in time and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be? Start a YouTube channel sooner. So that maybe the atheist community would be dominated by people like you instead of misogynistic douchebags. Mayo's Marquee. As a fan of the old Universal horror movies, do you have a preference for either Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi? And if not, who would you choose first if you could only pick one? Oh, I have a definite preference for Boris Karloff. I think he's a much better actor, and I think his movies were better. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against Bela Lugosi, but Karloff, by far. Dr. Themo, so Obama will take Syrian refugees, but 50,000 plus American vets are still homeless. What would you say to someone who makes that type of argument? I would agree that we need to find homes for the 50,000 homeless vets. And for all the rest of the homeless people in this country. That should be a priority. That should have been a priority from the first time we knew that it was a problem. I completely agree with that. I also think we should be taking in Syrian refugees. I think we should be taking in far more Syrian refugees than we want to take in. Obama wants to take in 10,000. The United Nations would like us to take 60,000. I'd love to see us take in even more. And we should find homes for all of them. And we should find homes for all of the homeless people too. Why do we only have to solve one problem? We should be solving both problems. Hey, that's it for the lightning round. Before I get out of here, I'm going to give a shout out to a very deserving YouTube channel. And this one is very close to my heart because the shout out this week goes to The Breakfast Club. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Steve, didn't you give a shout out to the Breakfast Club already some time ago when you first joined that particular collaborative channel? And Steve, doesn't the Breakfast Club no longer exist? Didn't the Breakfast Club close down a few weeks ago? Well, you're completely correct on both counts. This shout out is to the new version of the Breakfast Club, the Breakfast Club 2.0. See, what had happened was the original Breakfast Club was taken down, was deleted by DevShell 2, who founded it. He took it down for his own reasons. But one of our fellow Breakfast Clubbers, a veteran of the Breakfast Club, Got That Funk, decided that he liked doing the Breakfast Club so much that he wanted to start his own collaborative channel to sort of carry on the legacy of the Breakfast Club. So that's what he's done. And Dev has graciously allowed him to use the name from the old channel. So we have a brand new Breakfast Club, and it is linked in the description box of this video, and it starts posting its videos on Monday. So you can subscribe right now and get ready to see all new Breakfast Club videos starting Monday. Now, I will not be a regular contributor to this version of the Breakfast Club. Got That Funk was very gracious to invite me, but I declined just because I just don't have the time. The Breakfast Club had become a bit of a demand on my schedule, and actually not having to do those videos in addition to my regular content every week is kind of a relief to me. But I want to make sure that this new version of the Breakfast Club gets off to a rip-roaring start. It's already got a couple hundred subscribers, even though they don't even have any content up yet, which is awesome. But here is the lineup. Here's the new Breakfast Club lineup for this reborn version of the channel. Check this out. First of all, on Monday, Got That Funk will be leading things off. Tuesday, my old slot, JJ Talks, which is awesome. I'm so glad that she's taking over what was my slot on the original channel. Jacob Truman on Wednesday, Bionic Dance on Thursday, Sketchy White Dude on Friday, ZZZ Giant Awake on Saturday, and another Breakfast Club veteran, The Peach, on Sunday. So you have 3 veteran Breakfast Clubbers, Got That Funk, Josh, ZZZ Giant Awake, and Peach, along with 4 people who are new to it, who are not former Breakfast Clubbers. It's going to be so awesome. I can't wait to watch the new version of the Breakfast Club. I can't wait to see those videos pop up in my feed every day. And I would encourage you to check it out too. Watch the new version of the Breakfast Club starting on Monday. Subscribe now and check it out from the very beginning. And good on Got That Funk for bringing it back, because I think it's a wonderful channel and a wonderful project. I also want to remind you, as I always do, to check out another, I would call it a wonderful project, the Lemme Listen podcasts. These are the podcasts created by the mad genius behind Opinionville, Jason Harding. And he has 3 Lemme Listen podcasts that he does on the regular. There is Lemme Finish that he does with Atticus Blake. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, which you can listen to the entire first season right now. It's in hiatus until the new year, but the first 12-episode season is up and ready and complete, and you can listen to it from start to finish. You can binge listen to it, and I highly recommend that you do, because it is so funny and so great. It's like a cross between Coast to Coast AM and Twin Peaks. It's got a lot of supernatural stuff, and it's an improv comedy podcast, and it's just amazing, and I really think you should be listening to it. And finally, the Late Seating podcast, which Jason co-hosts with me, which is a movie review podcast where we look at old films, classic films, we give them a fresh watch and a fresh review and make fun of them whether we like them or not, and tell each other and you guys whether we think they deserve to be considered classics. It's so much fun. It's a great, great show. We're recording our next episode this weekend, but for now, today, if you haven't listened to it yet, you can listen to our most recent episode from last week, which is Goldfinger. And we're recording our new episode this weekend, and it'll be up next week, and I'll tell you more about that next week. But check out all of the Lemme Listen podcasts at lemmelistenpodcast.com. I highly recommend that you do. That's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here for another week. Thank you for watching. As always, leave a comment on this video to ask me your question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. Until the next video, thanks for watching, everybody, and take care. Miss me? It was like a long second of black, wasn't it? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, share it, subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this by sponsoring this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.